My sister's fiancé accused me of flirting with him at their engagement party. She screamed in front of everyone, "Stay away from us, you're not welcome at the wedding." My mother added, "We are completely disowning you. You're dead to this family." I said simply, "Understood." The next morning, I withdrew the entire $30,000 wedding fund I'd given her and canceled all the mortgage payments I'd been covering for my parents. 3 days later. I've always been the reliable one, the fixer, the provider. At 32, I'd built a successful consulting business while my younger sister Talia drifted through life on charm and our parents' unwavering support. I never minded helping, family is family, after all, until that fateful night when everything shattered over a lie that no one bothered to question. 3 days after the catastrophic engagement party, I sat in my home office staring at my laptop screen, my finger hovering over the send button. The email contained documented proof of my whereabouts during the alleged flirting with Nathaniel, my sister's fiancé, security footage from the venue showing me on the opposite side of the room, talking to elderly Mrs. Whitcomb about her grandson's college applications. I had debated sending it, proving my innocence, but something stopped me. My family had chosen to believe the worst about me without hesitation. Without even asking for my side of the story. The realization settled like ice in my stomach. They had always seen me as nothing more than a checkbook with conditions. I closed the laptop without sending the email. Let them discover the truth on their own, if they ever bothered to look for it. My phone buzzed for the 17th time that morning. Talia again. I'd ignored all her calls and messages since withdrawing the wedding fund, but curiosity finally got the better of me. Her text read, "Valerie, this isn't funny anymore. We need that money back. Mom and Dad are freaking out about the mortgage. You can't just punish everyone because your feelings got hurt. Grow up." I placed the phone face down on my desk without responding. The audacity was breathtaking. The doorbell rang just after noon. I peered through the peephole to find my father, Garrison, standing on my porch, his face set in that stern expression he'd perfected over decades of disappointment. For a moment, I considered not answering, but decided I might as well face this head on. I opened the door but remained in the threshold, blocking entry. "Valerie," he said, his voice artificially calm. "We need to talk about what you've done." "What I've done?" I replied, my voice steady. "That's interesting, considering no one wanted to talk about what I supposedly did at the engagement party." "This isn't about that," he dismissed with a wave of his hand. "This is about your responsibilities to this family." I laughed, a short, hollow sound. My responsibilities? I wasn't aware that being falsely accused and publicly humiliated came with financial obligations. "Don't be dramatic." Talia was upset. "You know how she gets." "But pulling the wedding money? Stopping the mortgage payments without warning? That's vindictive and childish." "Is that what you came to say? That I'm childish for not wanting to financially support people who called me dead to the family?" I crossed my arms. "You had no problem believing Nathaniel's lies. Did you even consider asking me what happened?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Look, you've always been jealous of your sister. We all know that." The statement hit me like a physical blow. After everything I'd done, the years of supporting them, the sacrifices I'd made, this was how they saw me. "Wow," I whispered. "I think you should leave. Not until you agree to return the wedding money and resume the mortgage payments. Your mother is beside herself." "No," I said simply. "I'm not doing that." His face darkened. "Then you're not the daughter we raised." "Apparently not," I agreed. "The daughter you raised was just an ATM. And that Valerie is officially closed for business." I shut the door on his stunned face. For years, I'd been carrying this family financially, helping with Talia's college tuition when she changed majors for the 3rd time, covering my parents' mortgage when my father was laid off and refused to take demeaning jobs beneath his qualifications, paying for family vacations I was too busy working to join. All while building my consulting business from the ground up, alone. And this was my thanks. My phone rang again. This time, it was Dara, my best friend since college. "I just got a bizarre call from your sister," she said without preamble. "She's telling everyone you've had some kind of mental breakdown." "What's happening?" I sighed and gave her the condensed version of events, from Nathaniel's false accusation to my family's immediate condemnation to my financial retaliation. "Oh." Dara breathed. "That's... wow. But are you sure about this, V? It's a lot of money to just walk away from." "It's not about the money," I said, rubbing my temples. "It's about respect. Basic human decency. They didn't even ask for my side of the story, Dara. Not one of them." "And what is your side? What actually happened with Nathaniel?" I explained how I'd barely interacted with him all night except to congratulate the couple. But he cornered me when I was coming back from the restroom. He tried to kiss me, said he'd always wanted me instead. I pushed him away and told him he was disgusting. Apparently, his version was that I'd been throwing myself at him all night and he had to let me down gently. And everyone, believed him. "That absolute vermin," Dara hissed. "We need to tell Talia the truth." I tried. She screamed over me. Called me horrible names. Said I'd always been jealous of her. My voice cracked. Maybe this is for the best. At least now I know where I stand. After hanging up with Dara, I made myself a cup of tea and tried to focus on work. I had a major pitch the following week that required my attention, but my concentration kept slipping. My phone continued buzzing with messages, from my mother now, alternating between guilt trips and threats of further family ostracism, as if they hadn't already done their worst. Around 4 in the afternoon, my doorbell rang again. This time, it was Talia herself, mascara streaked down her face, looking simultaneously furious and desperate. "How could you?" she demanded the moment I opened the door. "You know how much this wedding means to me. Hello to you too, Talia, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Would you like to come in, or would you prefer to scream at me on the porch where the neighbors can enjoy the show? She stormed past me into the living room. Don't act all superior. You need to transfer that money back right now. The venue is threatening to cancel without the next payment, and Mom and Dad got a notice about the mortgage. That's unfortunate, I replied, closing the door. But as I was informed quite publicly, I'm dead to this family. Dead people don't pay bills. Oh, grow up. Mom was upset. We all were. You were throwing yourself at my fiancé. Was I? I asked, raising an eyebrow. That's interesting, because the venue security cameras show me on the opposite side of the room when this alleged flirting occurred. I was talking to Mrs. Whitcomb about her grandson's college applications. Talia faltered for a moment before rallying. Well, that wasn't the only time. Nathaniel said you've been inappropriate with him for months. I laughed incredulously. Months? I've met him exactly 4 times, Talia. And I've never once been alone with him until he cornered me at the engagement party. He wouldn't lie about this. Wouldn't he? Have you asked yourself why he might make up such a story? What he might be hiding? She crossed her arms defensively. What's that supposed to mean? It means your fiancé tried to kiss me at your engagement party. When I rejected him, he panicked and decided to get ahead of the story by accusing me first. Talia's face flushed with anger. You're unbelievable. You can't stand that I'm happy, that I found someone who loves me, that for once in my life I'm getting something you don't have. The accusation stung, but I kept my expression neutral. Is that really what you think of me? After everything I've done for you, for all of you? That's exactly the problem. You hold everything you do over our heads like we're supposed to worship you for it. Saint Valerie, so successful, so generous. It's exhausting. I stared at her, truly seeing her for the first time. I never asked for worship, Talia. Just basic respect. Basic trust. The benefit of the doubt. Well, you've made your point with this little financial tantrum. Now fix it. I shook my head slowly. No. I don't think I will. Her eyes widened. What? The money is gone, Talia. I've invested it elsewhere. And the mortgage payments aren't resuming. You can't do this to us. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm simply stopping doing things for you. There's a difference. Talia's face crumpled into something ugly. You'll regret this. When you're old and alone with nothing but your money to keep you company, you'll regret throwing away your family. Maybe, I conceded. But right now, all I feel is relief. After she left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows, I poured myself a glass of water and tried to process the enormity of what had just happened. I had effectively cut ties with my entire family over a single incident. Was I overreacting? But no, this wasn't about one night. This was about years of being taken for granted, of being valued only for what I could provide, of never receiving the same unconditional support I'd always given. My phone buzzed with a text from Dara. Dinner tonight? You shouldn't be alone with all this. I accepted gratefully. 3 hours later, we were settled in a quiet corner of Lanterna, our favorite Italian restaurant, where I could finally relax for the first time in days. So what's your game plan? Dara asked, swirling her glass of Pinot Noir. They're not going to just let this go, you know. I don't have one, I admitted. I never thought it would come to this. I kept expecting someone, anyone, to at least ask for my side of the story. And the money? Is it really gone? I shook my head. No, I just moved it to another account. I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet. Dara nodded thoughtfully. But what about you? How are you really feeling about all this? I considered the question, trying to identify the emotion beneath the numbness. Sad, I finally said. But also, free? Like I've been carrying this enormous weight without realizing it, and suddenly it's gone. I get that. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. They took advantage of you for years. It was bound to come to a head eventually. Before I could respond, a familiar voice called my name. I looked up to see Nathaniel's brother, Ellery, approaching our table. Unlike his younger brother, Ellery had always struck me as thoughtful and genuine during our few interactions. Valerie, Dara, he greeted us. I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all, I said, though my stomach tightened. Would you like to join us? He hesitated. Actually, I was hoping to speak with you privately, Valerie. It's about what happened at the engagement party. Dara immediately began gathering her things. I need to use the restroom anyway. Take your time. Once she'd left, Ellery sat down, his expression grave. I want to apologize for my brother's behavior. What he did, what he said about you, it was inexcusable. I blinked in surprise. You know? He nodded. I overheard him talking to a friend the next morning, bragging about how he dodged a bullet by accusing you first. I confronted him, and he admitted everything. A wave of vindication washed over me, followed quickly by pain. Did you tell Talia? I tried. She doesn't want to hear it. She's convinced herself that I'm jealous of Nathaniel, that I've always tried to sabotage his relationships. He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. Which is ridiculous. I just know my brother. This isn't the first time he's done something like this. What do you mean? Ellery looked uncomfortable. Nathaniel has a pattern of inappropriate behavior with women. There was an incident at his last job, with his boss's wife. Another with a friend's girlfriend. He always manages to twist the story, make himself the victim. I've covered for him too many times, made excuses. I can't do it anymore. I absorbed this information slowly. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know you're not crazy. And because I'm worried about your sister. Nathaniel isn't who she thinks he is. I appreciate that, but Talia's made it clear she doesn't want me in her life. Ellery nodded sadly. I understand. But if you change your mind about trying to warn her, I'll back you up. Here's my number. He scribbled it on a napkin and slid it across the table. For what it's worth, I'm sorry about your family's reaction. It wasn't right. After he left and Dara returned, I filled her in on the conversation. She was furious on my behalf but also concerned. So what are you going to do? Try to tell Talia again? I considered the question. No, I decided. She's made her choice. They all have. I've spent my entire adult life bending over backward for people who couldn't even give me the benefit of the doubt. I'm done. The next week passed in a blur of work and ignored calls from family members. My parents escalated their attempts to contact me, alternating between guilt trips, demands, and eventually, desperate pleas as the reality of their financial situation set in. My father had taken early retirement years ago, confident that his pension and investments would sustain them. But poor financial decisions and a lavish lifestyle had left them dependent on my supplemental support they'd come to see as an obligation rather than the gift it was. Talia's messages grew increasingly frantic as she scrambled to salvage her wedding plans. The venue had indeed canceled their reservation when the next payment didn't arrive on time. The caterer and florist were threatening to do the same. Her dream wedding was unraveling, and she blamed me entirely. I immersed myself in work, landing the major client I'd been pitching to and taking on additional projects to fill my suddenly empty evenings and weekends, time I'd previously spent helping my family or attending their various functions. Dara checked in regularly, as did a few other friends who'd heard conflicting versions of the family drama. On Friday evening, 10 days after the engagement party, I was working late when my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and after the confrontations with my father and Talia, I approached the door warily. Through the peephole, I was surprised to see my maternal grandmother, Vivian, standing on my porch, looking as formidable as ever despite her 84 years. Grandma Viv had always been different from the rest of the family, practical, straightforward, and unwilling to tolerate nonsense from anyone, including her own daughter. She'd built a successful real estate business in an era when women weren't supposed to have careers at all, and she'd never quite approved of my mother's choice to be a homemaker or my father's financial carelessness. I opened the door immediately. Grandma Viv. This is a surprise. She eyed me critically. You look terrible. Not sleeping? I laughed despite myself. It's good to see you too. Come in. She marched into my living room with the energy of someone half her age and settled on my sofa without invitation. So, she said without preamble, your mother tells me you've lost your mind and abandoned the family. Your sister says you're jealous and vindictive. Your father claims you betrayed them all. I figured I should hear your version before deciding which one of you to disown. The bluntness was so typically Viv that I found myself smiling even as I prepared to rehash the painful story yet again. I gave her the unvarnished truth, including Ellery's confirmation of Nathaniel's character and my family's immediate decision to believe the worst of me. She listened without interruption, her expression giving nothing away. When I finished, she nodded once, decisively. Well, that settles it. I'm disowning them. I blinked. What? Your mother, your father, and that ungrateful sister of yours. I always said Eleanor spoiled that girl rotten. She sniffed disapprovingly. As for this Nathaniel character, I knew he was trouble the moment I met him. All charm and no substance. You believe me? I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. Grandma Viv's expression softened, a rare occurrence. Of course I believe you, child. You've never given anyone reason to doubt your character. Unlike some people I could mention. She reached into her handbag and pulled out an envelope. Here. I was going to give this to Talia for the wedding, but I think you'll make better use of it. I took the envelope hesitantly and peeked inside. It contained a check for $20,000. Grandma, I can't accept this. You most certainly can and will. Consider it an investment in your consulting business. Or a vacation fund. Or burn it in your fireplace for all I care. The point is, I'm giving it to you, not them. I don't need the money, I protested. This isn't about need, Valerie. It's about recognition. You've carried this family for years without acknowledgement. It's time someone acknowledged you. She fixed me with her piercing gaze. Now, are you going to pour me a drink, or do I have to do everything myself? I laughed and went to get her preferred bourbon. As I poured 2 fingers over ice, I felt something loosen in my chest, the first hint that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't completely alone in this. Grandma Viv stayed for dinner, regaling me with stories from her youth and offering acerbic commentary on the family drama. For the first time since the engagement party, I found myself genuinely laughing. When she left, she hugged me tightly and whispered, "Stand your ground, my girl. You're the only one in this family besides me with any backbone." The following morning, I woke to a series of increasingly alarming texts from Dara, "Call me ASAP," followed by "Seriously, V, this is important," and finally, "Your sister is at the Roasted Bean having a complete meltdown. You might want to get down here." The Roasted Bean was our local coffee shop, a place I frequented often enough that the baristas knew my order by heart. The thought of Talia creating a scene there made me cringe, but curiosity won out. I dressed quickly and drove the short distance, spotting Dara's car in the parking lot. Inside, I found Talia sobbing dramatically at a corner table while Dara watched with a mix of discomfort and fascination. The Saturday morning crowd was studiously pretending not to notice, but I could feel curious glances as I approached. "What's going on?" I asked Dara quietly. She grimaced. Nathaniel cheated on her. With her maid of honor, Phoebe. Apparently, they've been having an affair for months. Phoebe confessed everything last night. I closed my eyes briefly, absorbing this information. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated. Here was proof of Nathaniel's character, exactly as Ellery had described. But mostly, I just felt sad for my sister, who was clearly devastated. Talia looked up then, her makeup smeared and her eyes red-rimmed. For a moment, she just stared at me, hiccuping softly. Then she launched herself out of her chair and threw her arms around me, nearly knocking me over. "You were right," she wailed into my shoulder. "You were right about him, and I didn't listen, and now everything's ruined." Awkwardly, I patted her back, aware of the curious onlookers. "Let's get you out of here," I suggested. "We can talk at my place." Somehow, I managed to guide my hysterical sister to my car, with Dara following in her own vehicle. Once in my house, Talia collapsed onto my sofa and proceeded to tell the whole sordid tale between bouts of tears. Phoebe had been racked with guilt and had finally confessed everything to Talia the previous night. The affair had indeed been going on for months, predating even the engagement. When Nathaniel had proposed, Phoebe had assumed he would end things with her, but instead, he'd continued seeing her, going so far as to meet her immediately after the engagement party, the very night he'd accused me of inappropriate behavior. And I believed him, Talia sobbed. I believed him over my own sister. "I'm so sorry, Valerie. I've been horrible to you." I handed her another tissue. "Yes, you have," I agreed, not quite ready to offer easy forgiveness. "I deserve that," she acknowledged miserably. "I deserve all of it. But I don't know what to do now. The wedding is cancelled, obviously. But we've lost the venue deposit, and most of the vendors won't refund anything at this point, and Mom and Dad are freaking out about the mortgage, and it's all just falling apart." I exchanged glances with Dara, who raised her eyebrows in a "what are you going to do?" expression. The practical part of me, the fixer, the provider, wanted to step in immediately and solve all these problems. But another part, the part that had been hurt and betrayed, held back. "What do you want from me, Talia?" I asked directly. She looked up, surprised by the question. I don't know. I just thought you should know you were right. About Nathaniel. And I'm sorry. For not believing you. For the things I said." She twisted the tissue in her hands. "For the things Mom and Dad said too." I nodded, acknowledging the apology without immediately accepting it. "And the money? Is that why you're here? For the wedding fund and the mortgage payments?" Talia flushed. "No. Well, I mean, yes, we do need help. But that's not why I came to find you. I just needed my sister." The words hit me harder than I expected. For all her flaws, all her selfishness and drama, Talia was still my little sister. The girl who'd followed me around when we were children, who'd crawled into my bed during thunderstorms, who'd cried when I left for college. "I need some time," I said finally. "This isn't something we can fix in one conversation." She nodded, looking crestfallen but not surprised. "I understand. I wouldn't forgive me either." After Talia left, promising to give me space but also extracting a promise that I would call her eventually, Dara stayed behind to help me process. "Well, that was unexpected," she remarked, curling up in my armchair with a cup of tea. "Are you okay?" I considered the question. I don't know. Part of me wants to jump right back into fixing everything for them. But another part is still angry. Still hurt. Both of those feelings are valid, Dara pointed out. You can be angry and still love them. You can set boundaries and still help. I suppose, I agreed. But I'm not sure what those boundaries should look like. That's for you to decide. But whatever you choose, I support you. I spent the rest of the weekend reflecting on what had happened and what I wanted to do next. On Sunday evening, Ellery called to check in, having heard about Nathaniel and Phoebe from mutual friends. "I wish I could say I'm surprised," he said, his voice heavy with resignation. "How's your sister holding up?" "As well as can be expected," I replied. "It's a lot to process." "And you? How are you doing with all this?" The genuine concern in his voice was touching. "Taking it one day at a time," I said honestly. "It's complicated. Family always is," he agreed. "Listen, I know this is terrible timing, but I'm organizing a charity gala for the Children's Hospital next month. I could use someone with your organizational skills on the committee. No pressure, just thought it might be a good distraction." I found myself smiling. That actually sounds perfect. Count me in. By Monday morning, I had made several decisions. First, I would not immediately resume the mortgage payments for my parents. Instead, I would offer to help them explore refinancing options or downsizing to a more manageable home. Second, I would not return the wedding fund to Talia, but I would help her negotiate with vendors to minimize the financial damage of the cancellation. And third, I would start setting clearer boundaries with my family going forward, financial and otherwise. I called my grandmother first to share my plans and to thank her again for her support. She approved wholeheartedly of my approach. "Make them work for it," she advised. "Eleanor and Garrison have been coasting on your generosity for too long. And Talia needs to learn there are consequences for her actions." Next, I called Talia, who answered on the first ring as if she'd been waiting by the phone. "Valerie? Does this mean you're speaking to me again?" "I'm willing to talk," I clarified. "We have a lot to work through." "I know," she said quickly. "And I'm ready to listen this time." "Really listen?" "Good. Because I've been thinking about the wedding fund and the vendors." "Oh," she said, her voice small. "I wasn't going to ask about that. I know I don't deserve your help after how I treated you." "You're right, you don't," I agreed. "But I'm offering anyway, with conditions. I'll help you negotiate with the vendors to minimize the losses. But the money itself stays with me." "That's more than fair," she said immediately. "Thank you." "There's more," I continued. "Going forward, things are going to be different between us. I won't be your default financial safety net anymore. I won't drop everything to solve your problems. And I expect to be treated with respect and trust. There was a pause before she responded, her voice thoughtful. I understand. And I'm going to do better, Valerie. I promise. I wasn't entirely convinced, but it was a start. We'll see, I said neutrally. Now, let's talk about those vendors. My parents were a more challenging conversation. I arranged to meet them at their home, neutral ground of sorts, with Grandma Viv present as a buffer and ally. When I arrived, the atmosphere was tense. My mother, Eleanor, looked like she'd been crying, while my father maintained the stony expression he adopted whenever he felt cornered. Before we start, I said as we all sat down in the living room, I want to make one thing clear. I'm here to discuss possible solutions to your financial situation, not to be guilted or manipulated. If that happens, I'll leave immediately. My father bristled visibly, but Grandma Viv cut him off before he could speak. Garrison, for once in your life, listen more than you talk. Valerie is doing you a courtesy by being here at all. He subsided, though his expression remained mutinous. My mother wrung her hands anxiously. We appreciate you coming, Valerie. We've been so worried about the mortgage. I'm sure you have, I said evenly. Let's talk about your options. I've done some research, and you have several. First, you could refinance. Second, you could downsize to a more manageable home. Third, Dad could return to work, at least part-time. Return to work? My father repeated incredulously. At my age? And after my position at the company? Yes, I said firmly. Many people work well into their 70s these days, and you're only 63. Your experience is valuable. It might not be at the executive level you're accustomed to, but there are opportunities. This is absurd, he muttered. After everything we've done for you girls, what exactly have you done for me, Dad? I interrupted. I worked my way through college. I built my business without any help from you. I've been supporting you financially for years. So please, enlighten me about everything you've done. He sputtered incoherently while my mother looked stricken. Grandma Viv nodded approvingly. That's not fair, my mother protested weakly. We gave you a home, an education, the education I paid for myself, I corrected. And yes, you gave me a home until I was 18. That's what parents are supposed to do. It's the bare minimum, not some extraordinary sacrifice. How dare you speak to us this way, my father growled. After we raised you, Garrison, Grandma Viv interjected sharply. That's enough. Valerie is right, and you know it. You two have been taking advantage of her success for years. It's time to take responsibility for yourselves. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Finally, my mother spoke, her voice small. What about the mortgage payments? Will you resume them while we figure things out? I took a deep breath. No. But I will help you explore these other options. I'll connect you with a financial advisor, a real estate agent if you decide to sell, or job placement services for Dad. The choice is yours, but the days of me simply writing checks are over. And if we lose the house? My father challenged. That would be unfortunate, I acknowledged. But it would be a consequence of your choices, not mine. The conversation continued in circles for another hour, with my parents alternating between anger, bargaining, and reluctant acceptance. By the end, no firm decisions had been made, but I had held my ground, and they seemed to understand, however grudgingly, that the dynamic had permanently changed. As I prepared to leave, my mother pulled me aside. Talia told us what happened with Nathaniel, she said quietly. That he was. That you were telling the truth. I'm sorry we didn't listen. It was the closest thing to a genuine apology I'd received from her, and despite everything, it meant something. Thank you for saying that, I replied. It matters. Over the next few weeks, a new normal gradually emerged. Talia and I began rebuilding our relationship, starting with small gestures, coffee dates, text check-ins, honest conversations about our childhood and the patterns that had shaped our adult dynamic. She surprised me with her willingness to acknowledge her part in our dysfunctional family system and her determination to change. My parents were slower to adapt. My father initially refused to consider returning to work, but as the financial reality set in, he reluctantly began exploring consulting opportunities in his former industry. My mother, showing unexpected resilience, took a part-time position at a local boutique to supplement their income. They were considering downsizing but hadn't yet committed to selling their home. I maintained my boundaries firmly but not punitively, offering guidance and emotional support while refusing to slip back into my role as the family's financial safety net. It wasn't always easy. There were tense moments, tearful conversations, occasional backsliding into old patterns. But each time, I held steady, reminding myself and them that this new dynamic was healthier for everyone in the long run. Grandma Viv became an unexpected ally in this process, using her formidable personality to keep my parents on track when they veered toward entitlement or self-pity. Eleanor, she would say to my mother, stop acting like asking your daughter for money is easier than earning it yourself. It's embarrassing at your age. Meanwhile, my work on Ellery's charity gala committee provided a welcome distraction from family drama. We met weekly to plan the event, and I found myself looking forward to these meetings more than I cared to admit. Ellery was nothing like his brother, thoughtful, honest, and genuinely committed to the children's hospital where he volunteered regularly. Our professional relationship gradually evolved into friendship. 6 months after the disastrous engagement party, I hosted a small dinner at my home. Around my table sat Grandma Viv, sharp-tongued and commanding as ever, Talia, more grounded and self-aware than I'd ever seen her, my parents, humble but slowly finding their footing in their new financial reality, Dara, my steadfast friend through it all, and Ellery, whose quiet presence at my side felt increasingly right. As I looked around at this imperfect gathering, I realized something important. I hadn't lost my family after all. I'd simply redefined what family meant, not unlimited sacrifice without reciprocity, but mutual respect, honest communication, and healthy boundaries. The journey had been painful, the reconciliation incomplete, but we were finding our way towards something healthier than what we'd had before. A toast, Grandma Viv announced, raising her glass. To Valerie, who finally developed the backbone I always knew she had. Laughter rippled around the table, breaking the last traces of tension. My mother looked momentarily uncomfortable but managed a genuine smile. To Valerie, she echoed, who taught us all some valuable lessons. My father cleared his throat. I suppose I should say something too, he said gruffly. I'm not good at this sort of thing, but I'm proud of you, Valerie. Not just for your success, but for standing up for yourself. Even when it was against us. Especially then. The admission clearly cost him, and I appreciated it all the more for that. Thank you, Dad, I said simply. Talia leaned over to squeeze my hand. To my big sister, who gave me the wake-up call I desperately needed. I'm still mortified about what happened, but I'm also grateful. As terrible as it was discovering the truth about Nathaniel, it would have been infinitely worse to have married him. Here, Ellery said, raising his glass. Though I feel compelled to once again apologize for being related to him. You're nothing like your brother, I assured him, our eyes meeting briefly. Thank goodness for that, Dara muttered, making everyone laugh again. As dinner progressed, conversation flowed more naturally than it had in years. My father talked about the consulting project he'd recently taken on, showing more enthusiasm than I'd seen from him since his retirement. My mother shared anecdotes from the boutique, where she discovered a talent for styling that had earned her a loyal clientele. Talia discussed her decision to return to school for a degree in social work, inspired partly by her own experience with emotional manipulation and partly by the women's shelter where I'd eventually donated the wedding fund. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of awkwardness, brief flashes of old resentments, the occasional tone-deaf comment. But underneath it all was something new, a genuine effort to understand each other, to listen rather than assume, to respect boundaries rather than push against them. After everyone had left except Ellery, who'd stayed to help clean up, I found myself exhaling a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. That went well, he observed, loading the last of the dishes into the dishwasher. Better than you expected? Much better, I admitted. There were moments I was sure someone would say something unforgivable, but we actually made it through the entire evening like civilized adults. He smiled, leaning against the counter. Your grandmother is quite a force of nature. That she is, I agreed with a laugh. I've always admired her, but never more than these past few months. She doesn't tolerate nonsense from anyone. I can see where you get it from, he said, his eyes warm. Get what? That spine of steel beneath all the niceness. I considered this, head tilted. I don't think I always had it. Or if I did, I didn't use it very often, especially with family. Well, you have it now, he said. It's quite something to witness. There was an undercurrent to his words that made my pulse quicken slightly. We've been dancing around this growing attraction for weeks, neither of us quite ready to acknowledge it directly given the complicated family dynamics involved. Ellery, I began carefully, I should probably tell you that Talia asked me something interesting earlier. Oh? He straightened, suddenly alert. She wanted to know if we were dating. Apparently, she's noticed vibes between us. He laughed softly. And what did you tell her? The truth. That we're friends who happen to enjoy each other's company. That it's complicated, given everything that's happened. I paused, gathering my courage. And that I wouldn't be opposed to exploring something more, when the timing feels right. Ellery's expression softened. I wouldn't be opposed to that either, he said quietly. But I agree about the timing. There's no rush. We have time to get this right. His understanding meant more than I could express. After everything that had happened, the false accusations, the family drama, the painful process of rebuilding trust, the last thing I wanted was to rush into something new, no matter how promising it seemed. Thank you, I said simply. He nodded, then checked his watch. I should probably head out. Early meeting tomorrow. At the door, he hesitated, then leaned in to place a gentle kiss on my cheek. For the record, he murmured, I think you're remarkable, Valerie Harlow. And worth waiting for. After he left, I stood in my doorway for a long moment, feeling something unfamiliar settle in my chest, not the weight of obligation I'd carried for so long, but something lighter, more hopeful. A sense of possibility. The next morning, I woke early and made myself a cup of coffee, enjoying the quiet before beginning my workday. My phone chimed with a text from Talia. Lunch today? My treat this time. I smiled at the this time, a small acknowledgement of how one-sided our relationship had been before. Sure, I replied. The usual place at 12:30? A few minutes later, another text arrived, this one from my mother. Your father has an interview today for a part-time consulting position. He's nervous though he'd never admit it. Any advice I can pass along? I considered this request carefully. 6 months ago, it would have been the prelude to asking for money or some other favor. Now, it seemed like a genuine attempt to connect, to value my professional expertise. Progress, however small. Tell him to focus on his experience as an asset, not a liability, I wrote back. And to remember that he's interviewing them as much as they're interviewing him. Thank you, dear, she responded. That's very helpful. And Valerie? Last night meant a lot to us. To me. I felt a lump form in my throat. To me too, Mom. Later that morning, I received an email from the women's shelter acknowledging the donation I'd made from the wedding fund. They'd used it to renovate their children's playroom and to fund a series of financial literacy workshops for women leaving abusive relationships. Attached were photos of the bright, cheerful space they'd created, so different from the dingy room Dara and I had helped paint during our volunteer days. I forwarded the email to Talia with a simple note, "Thought you'd want to see this." Her response came quickly, "It's beautiful. So much better than those ridiculous ice sculptures I wanted. Can I volunteer there sometime? Maybe we could go together?" "I'd like that," I replied, surprised and touched by the suggestion. At lunch, Talia was already waiting when I arrived, a rarity in our previous dynamic where she'd always been the one running late. She looked different somehow, calmer, more centered, less concerned with her appearance and more present in the moment. "I have news," she announced as soon as I sat down. "I've been accepted to the social work program. Classes start next month." "Talia, that's wonderful," I said sincerely. "I'm so proud of you." She beamed, looking genuinely happy for the first time in months. "It feels right, you know? Using what happened with Nathaniel to help other women avoid similar situations. Making something good out of something awful." "That's exactly the right way to think about it," I agreed. "I've also been seeing a therapist," she admitted. "She's helping me understand some patterns. Like why I was so quick to believe Nathaniel over you. How I've always been a bit jealous of you, even while depending on you. It's not easy to face, but it's necessary." I reached across the table to squeeze her hand. "I'm seeing someone too," I confessed. "Turns out I have my own patterns to work through. Being the fixer, the provider. Deriving my self-worth from being needed." Talia nodded thoughtfully. "We're quite the pair, aren't we? But we're getting better." "We are," I agreed. "One day at a time." As we ate, Talia asked about Ellery, her expression knowing. "You two seemed pretty cozy last night." I felt myself blush slightly. "We're taking things slow. But yes, there's definitely something there." "I'm happy for you," she said, and the remarkable thing was, I believed her. "Just be careful, okay? Not because he's Nathaniel's brother, I know he's nothing like him. But because you deserve someone who appreciates all of you, not just what you can do for them." I stared at her, momentarily speechless. It was perhaps the most insightful thing my sister had ever said to me, a clear indication of how much she'd grown. "That works both ways," I said finally. "You deserve that too." "I know," she said with newfound confidence. "And I'm not settling for less ever again." After lunch, I returned to my office to find an email from the charity gala committee. There had been a last-minute issue with the venue and everyone was scrambling for solutions. Normally, this would have sent me into fix-it mode immediately, dropping everything to solve the problem. Instead, I took a deep breath and considered my actual availability and responsibilities. I had a client meeting in 20 minutes that I couldn't reschedule. After that, I could devote a couple of hours to the venue issue, but then I had personal plans for the evening, a yoga class I'd been looking forward to all week. I drafted a measured response, offering specific help within those parameters rather than promising to handle everything myself. It felt strange, setting these limits, but also right. Healthy. My phone rang, Grandma Viv. "Just checking to make sure last night didn't undo all your good work," she said without preamble. I laughed. "No, we're still on track. Dad has a job interview today, Mom seems genuinely interested in my advice rather than just my checkbook, and Talia and I just had a lunch where she demonstrated more self-awareness than I've seen in her entire life." "Miracles never cease," Grandma Viv commented dryly. "And that Ellery fellow? He seems quite taken with you." "The feeling is mutual," I admitted. "But we're proceeding cautiously." "Smart girl. Now, about that check I gave you. Have you decided what to do with it?" I hesitated. "Actually, I've been thinking about using it as seed money for a foundation. Something focused on financial literacy for women, especially those leaving difficult situations." She said, and I could picture her thoughtful expression. "Not what I expected, but I like it. Put me down for another 20,000. Grandma, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. That's the difference you're learning, isn't it? Doing things because you want to, not because you feel obligated?" I smiled at her perception. "Yes, exactly that." "Good. Now, I expect a proper business plan before I write that check. Just because you're my favorite grandchild doesn't mean I'm not a shrewd investor." "I wouldn't have it any other way," I assured her. After we hung up, I sat at my desk for a moment, reflecting on how much had changed in 6 months. The night of the engagement party had felt like an ending, the severing of family ties, the loss of relationships I'd valued despite their flaws. Instead, it had become a beginning. Painful, yes, but ultimately transformative. My phone chimed with a text from Ellery, "Venue crisis apparently resolved. Still on for coffee tomorrow?" "Absolutely," I replied. "Looking forward to it." Another text arrived, this one from my father, "Interview went well. They seemed impressed by my experience. Thank you for the advice." I smiled at the simple expression of gratitude, something that would have been unthinkable from him 6 months ago. The final message of the day came from Dara, "Proud of you for hosting dinner last night and not poisoning anyone's food. Major growth. Wine and movie at my place this weekend?" I laughed out loud. "You know it. I'll bring the wine, you pick the movie. No family drama allowed." "Deal," she responded. Though I kinda miss the drama now that it's mostly resolved. Makes my own family seem boring by comparison. "Trust me," I wrote back, "boring is underrated." As I prepared to leave the office for my yoga class, I glanced at the framed photo on my desk, a new edition, taken at a family picnic the previous month. In it, Grandma Viv sat regally in the center, surrounded by the rest of us. My parents, looking older but somehow more at peace. Talia, laughing at something off camera. Me, standing slightly apart but still very much part of the group. And Ellery, who'd been invited at the last minute, his hand just barely touching mine, a promise of something yet to unfold. It wasn't a perfect family portrait. There were still shadows in our expressions, remnants of past hurts not fully healed. But there was also something new, an authenticity that hadn't been there before. We were no longer playing the roles assigned to us, the provider, the favorite, the parents who could do no wrong. We were just people, flawed and complex, learning how to be a family in a healthier way. I picked up the photo, studying it for a moment before placing it carefully in my bag. I'd recently started a habit of bringing small personal touches to my office, a subtle reminder that work was just one part of my life, not its entirety. Another small but significant change. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot. I took a deep breath of fresh air, feeling an unfamiliar lightness in my steps. For so long, I defined myself by what I could give to others, by the problems I could solve, the burdens I could carry. I'd mistaken sacrifice for love, obligation for connection. Now, I was learning a different way to be, still generous, still caring, but with boundaries that protected my own well-being. Still part of a family, but one built on mutual respect rather than one-sided obligation. It hadn't been an easy lesson. The night of the engagement party, when I'd said that simple word, understood I had no idea where it would lead. I'd acted out of hurt and anger, withdrawing financial support as the only form of power available to me in that moment. But what had begun as revenge had evolved into something far more valuable, a reclaiming of my own worth, separate from what I could provide for others. A family restructured on healthier terms. Relationships based on choice rather than obligation. And perhaps most surprisingly, the possibility of new love, built on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect, something I might never have been open to while still caught in old patterns. As I drove to my yoga class, I reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. It had been painful, messy, and often uncomfortable. There had been moments when I questioned every decision, when it would have been easier to slip back into familiar patterns, to write the checks, to fix the problems, to be the reliable Valerie everyone had always counted on. But I'd held firm, not out of spite but out of a growing understanding that true love, for others and for oneself, sometimes requires standing your ground. That healthy relationships involve give and take, not just give and give and give. My phone rang through the car's Bluetooth system. Ellery's name appeared on the display. I smiled as I answered, curious about what tomorrow might bring, but also content with today, with exactly where I was and who I was becoming. Valerie, he greeted me warmly. I know we're meeting tomorrow, but I just heard about an interesting opportunity I thought you might want to know about. The Hospital Foundation is looking for board members with business experience, and your name came up in conversation. Once, I would have automatically said yes, adding another responsibility to my overflowing plate. Now, I took a moment to consider. That sounds interesting, I said thoughtfully. Can you send me the details? I'd like to learn more about the time commitment before deciding. Of course, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. No pressure either way. I just thought it aligned with your interests. I appreciate you thinking of me, I said sincerely. And Ellery? Thank you for understanding the importance of choice. Always, he replied simply. As I ended the call and pulled into the parking lot of the yoga studio, I felt a sense of profound gratitude wash over me. Not for what I'd lost, but for what I'd found in the aftermath, my voice, my boundaries, and a new way of being in relationship with the people I loved. The night of the engagement party had seemed like the end of everything. Instead, it had been the beginning of something far more valuable than a wedding fund or mortgage payments could ever buy, the freedom to be fully myself, to love without losing myself in the process, and to build connections based on mutual respect rather than obligation. It wasn't the ending I'd expected, but as I'd learned over these past 6 months, sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings. And this beginning, imperfect as it might be, was one I was genuinely grateful for. I checked my watch before entering the studio. Exactly on time, not early to accommodate someone else's schedule, not late because I'd been solving someone else's problem. Just on time, for myself. Another small victory in the journey of becoming the woman I was meant to be all along.